Hey everybody, welcome back to Trial and Error. I am pleased to do another review for YesWelder. So I've reviewed, I think, two or three of their other pieces of welding and plasma cutting equipment. And just like before, we're gonna go beyond just a normal review and we're gonna pop open the case. We're gonna take a look at some of the components and the design just to make sure that they continue on their tradition so far of exceeding my expectations in terms of build quality and component selection. And we'll obviously test it out too and make sure it's a decent welder. But I'm pretty excited to tear into this one. This is probably their more popular, if not one of their most popular welders that they sell. So hopefully you find some of this helpful to you if you're on or in the market for a new welder. So without much further ado, let's get into it. All right, so we'll quickly go through the accessories here. Got a gas hose, rubber, decent. This is a tool which you will never use because the first time you do it, all of these bend over flat and they're useless. Very nice stick welding clamp here with a ton of tension, which is really, really important. But a ton of tension there, and it's a good length, about 10, 12 feet, somewhere in that range. We've got our 120 to 240 volt adapter. I like YesWelders. They come pre-set up right into the wall for 120 volts. Plug this guy in and you're on 240, so nice and easy to switch between the two. And it also makes just making this a portable 120 volt welder very easy. Ground cable, same thing here. A lot of the lesser expensive welders will really cheap out. They'll put like a 6-foot ground clamp cord on there, way shorter than what they give you for the actual wand itself. And it's a pain in the ass, and it really restricts your ability. Same size as this. I think it's a 10 or 11 or 12 foot, somewhere in that range. Decent quality, clamp. I mean, it's got a lot of tension on it too, which is good, but these clamps don't tend to last that long. But again, what do you expect? That's about the same no matter what welder you buy. You don't find much nicer ones in the more well-known brands. And a really important thing, obviously the gun here, nice trigger on it. They always do a nice job, whether it's a plasma cutter or welders. They do a really nice job with the guns themselves. Only thing I don't like about this is this strain relief is it's like it's just for appearances only. It doesn't do much. Now the truth is you don't really need a lot of strain relief on one of these. It doesn't take that much of a beating, and this stuff's pretty heavy duty, but this is just kind of an aesthetic piece more than it is an actual strain relief because it's not bonded to the actual rubber here and helping to support it. But other than that, nothing to be concerned about there. Yep, very standard fitting for your gas and electrode connection here. So that can be easily replaced. This is the same style fitting you'll see on just about every welder coming out from overseas. They also give you a couple of extra nozzles for your gun too when you burn those things and melt them into a penny. Manual written most likely in Chinglish, but that's okay. They're pretty straightforward to operate. In terms of the unit itself, pretty standard setup here. So if you're going to be running this thing on CO2 gas, then you're going to want to connect this guy to our positive connection here. If you were running it gasless, you would just bring this guy over here, use the positive for your actual wand lead. But we're going to be using it with gas today. Just like the rest of this line, it uses an IGBT power supply style, so it's like a switch mode power supply, and that means it's incredibly efficient as well as light, which is great for portability, but that efficiency gives us up to 160 amps of current, welding current, off of a regular household outlet. If you want the full 210, that's when you step up to the 240 volts, but 160, even if that's probably a little wishful thinking, because whether it's a well-known name brand or one of these, they all kind of tend to stretch that number a little. But I would be very confident in saying that just based on the equipment I've used with them in the past, that you're getting a good 150 amps out of this thing at 120 volts, which is a lot of power for a portable welder like that. So we will connect our ground clamp to our negative here, and then these are always a pain in the ass. This one's going to be no different. Get on in there! And we will connect this guy. Just making sure you align this before you plug it in, because there are some little pins on there that are easy to damage. Although they are pretty tough for what they are. And just tighten the collar down. There we go. And front side wise, we're ready to go. This is actually a very flexible machine, and especially if it's your only welder or your first welder, because you don't just have to go with the gas MIG here. It does give you the option for flux core, which is really nice to have, and it's nice to have in a pinch. If you run out of other welding wire, you can just pop a thing of flux core in there and you now have a flux core welder. It does also have the option for a lift TIG, which is a little bit harder to do for most people, so I don't think these machines are going to see a lot of lift TIG action. You're much better off getting a true TIG machine that has the high frequency start, but at any rate it gives you that as an option too, so that's a lot of crap to pack into one little chassis. Now, there are two very important pieces here, probably the most important thing to me in a big machine, and we're looking at them right now. One is the tension system for the drag on the wire, and then the other part of it is the feed system. And you will see if you go to Harbor Freight or whatever, looking at some of those cheaper ones, you're going to see a lot of plastic in here, and a lot of plastic even in the chassis, the body of this thing. This takes a lot of abuse over a long period of time, especially if you're not quite adjusted properly here and you put too much drag on it. It's really nice to see. This looks like it's all cast. They've even chrome plated the roller link here, and a nice tensioning assembly here with indicating marks so that you can kind of get used to where you should be based on the diameter of wire that you choose to weld with. So really like to see that. This is also, basically everything is adjustable here, but it's all on stainless steel rollers in a cast aluminum or cast zinc or cast something assembly. So that's one of the things I always look for here, and for any of you that are shopping for these things, really pay close attention to that drive motor assembly and the entire chassis that's in. Everything else, just like their other welders, nice heavy duty steel. I mean, it doesn't give. This is not tinny at all. Plastic hinges here aren't the best, but they pretty much are all doing that now. So I think we're gonna have to suck that one up. Everything gets built down to a price at some level, but at least it's on there with 2 bolts, 2 screws. Nice heavy door, good latch assembly. I see no issues there. So we're gonna load up some 035, which also happens to be from YesWelder. This is from my private stock. I just happen to use their welding wire for everything in all my machines, from Lincoln to Prime Weld or anything else, because frankly, it's the best deal on wire that you can find just about anywhere. And I'll link in the description. There's a 10% off code. Go right to their website, YesWelder.com. Use that code. You'll save 10% off anything you buy, from weld wire to obviously the machines themselves. So you can save a whole lot of money there, and you're already getting probably the best deal that at least I've been able to find on weld wire. 10-pound spools, in my opinion, is the way to go. Loading these, not something you want to be doing all the time, so don't even bother with the little 5 or the 2.5-pound spools. They're just not worth your time. Do it once and with a 10-pounder, and you're usually good for a while. We are using 035. It's kind of my go-to welding wire. I like it. It's kind of right in the middle. You can do just about anything with it. One thing I did forget to mention, almost as important as the highest wattage or amperage that these will put out, is the lowest setting, and this will go all the way down to 30 amps, which is great for some finer sheet metal work. Some machines drop at 50 and kind of cut off there, and that makes doing some body repairs and stuff like that really tricky, because you just blow through the material. But at 30 amps, you can get into 16 gauge, 18 gauge very delicately and not blow through the stuff, so that's great. All right, well, that doesn't get any easier to put a spool in than that. All right, so to release mechanism, I'm guessing we just pull, yep, we just pull there, top roller comes up. We're going to carefully pull out the start of this roll, and we're going to tension this so it's where we want it. Just a little bit of drag there for now. Oh, don't you do that to me. Take a nice pair of snips, and I just like to put like a 45-degree cut on that. Just makes loading it a little bit easier. Turn this guy back right into that spring. Actually, before I do that, just try to straighten that very end tip out, and we feed it. All right, we are in. Flip this guy back down, close it, and then I'm just going to pull on this a little bit. Yeah, that's more than tight enough, and then I'm going to back that off just a little bit, until I have to put a ton of force on it, but I can feel it start to slide between the two, because this doesn't need to be super, super duper tight. You'll kind of bind it up and makes it hard on the machine. So you just back it off till it takes a lot of force, but you can feel it slip past those grooves. Then you're pretty much tensioned right. Obviously you go with a smaller wire, you're gonna put more tension on it, larger wire, less tension, so on and so forth. But we're in, check our spool. I'm gonna tighten that just a little bit. You just don't want this thing to be able to freewheel in here. You just want it to be able to pull off. If any of you have ever lost the end of that and let it go spoing, it makes for a very long afternoon. So we try to avoid that. Back of the machine, just like most of the rest of their line, on and off switch, good quality, good snap action, nice heavy duty cord, good strain relief on this where it's really important. Just due to the board layout here, and I did attempt to actually remove this board, but I honestly can't figure out what the hell's holding it in place so tightly. It's like the rest of their equipment, they always do a really good job of securing their main boards and even their sub panel or sub boards here. But we've got, again, name brand relays coming back into the game. I didn't find those on my last review on the plasma cutter, but they are in here. Same thing, JW Co capacitors being used in here as well. So like, again, stuff you just don't expect to find at that price point. Wire cable management, freaking phenomenal. Again, very consistent across their entire brand. Everything is protected, strain relieved, tied up, nylon chafing protection, nice heavy gauge welding conductors here. They are aluminum, but you're gonna find that on everything. Every machine now, everybody's pretty much switched to aluminum just because copper's gone through the roof. But they've even red Loctited every single connection here, or something similar to Loctite, basically keep it from backing off. Celastic on the back of the IGBT transformers, holding those in place. Again, board is really, really stiff. And then looking at the actual board work itself, just nothing like it used to be coming out of China. So I'll give you a real tight zoom in here on what appears to be the display driving board. I mean, just look at the detail. I mean, these are obviously done by machine now, but even their early machine work on stuff coming out of China was never this good. Everything is so tightly laid out, perfectly placed, well soldered, just really, really impressive board work. And the same, you'll have to take my word for it on the other part of the board that we can't see, but from what I can see of it, same thing in really nice shape. Chokes on just about everything that could potentially cause interference. All those little details, that stuff adds up, and they don't seem to cut any corners here. By taking this off, I was able to see the back of the cast block for the drive mechanism, and you can actually see that the motor is bolted directly into that cast. So there is no plastic in between the motor and the actual drive assembly wheels for feeding the MIG wire through. So that's, I mean, that's really
very nice.
And again, not expected at the price point that this thing's being sold at. Ready for our initial power up. We've got a gas check button here. Oh, that's nice. All right, so you just to check your gas line, you can tap that. And then this looks like our feed button, which is handy to have. My other machine doesn't have that, you've got to use the trigger. But this one, when we just loaded that new spool, you can just run the feeder instead of, you know, firing up the welder itself by using the torch. So we'll try that out. I can hear it. There it is. We are all set up here and ready to go. However, I did just realize that the spool of wire that I just fed into this thing is a flux core spool. So that's meant for not needing gas shielding. So the good news is we're going to test that, which I wasn't going to test before. But since we already got the spool run through here, we might as well use it on that setting. So we're going to power this thing on. We're going to go through the settings. I'll show you how to set that up. And we'll do a little flux core welding, surprisingly. So this is actually really easy to operate because it automatically will adjust your voltage and feed settings based on amperage by default. So again, first timers, that makes life really easy. You're just going to select this button here, and as I'm changing this, this is my amperage, and then this is my voltage. So we're gonna work with some 316 stuff, so we're gonna probably hang around that 95 amp range, somewhere in there, and we'll need to fine tune it a little bit. However, if you want to go in and make further adjustments, you can scroll through and make adjustments. This one is based on material thickness, so right there it's set at 1.8 millimeters. If I scroll through some more, I can adjust the voltage offset. So if I want to feed it more voltage based on the reference that's already in the machine for that automatic setup, I can do that. And it should let me go, oops, I'm on the wrong button there. It should let me adjust up and down. So yeah, I can go up to 10 and I can go down to 10 on voltage. So that's just varying from what's built into the machine. And then you have an inductance setting you can change as well. So that's getting slightly more artful in your welding, but if you were doing an inside corner of a joint, for instance, you'd want to crank that inductance up. Whereas you're doing an outside joint in a corner, you would want to crank that inductance down. So you've got 10 steps of adjustment in each direction for that. Our next button here is 2T, 4T, and that's the trigger mode. In 2T, it'll work as long as I'm holding the trigger. As soon as I release, it stops. In 4T, I tap the trigger, it starts welding, and it will continue to weld until I tap that trigger again. Next button down here, you can choose your gas. So we have a MIG, what do we got? CO2, straight CO2, MAG, so that's going to be a mixture of gas, 75-25. We have liftoff TIG. No, that's not liftoff TIG. That's stick welding, sorry. Next one up, that's lift TIG. And then gasless, which is what we're going to be using since I put the wrong spool of stuff in there, which is fine. Then we've got a couple of buttons here, the feed button, which you already saw in use, and then a gas check button, which will turn on that solenoid just so you can check make sure you're getting gas through your gun, but it also helps you when you're adjusting your regulator. I can just push this and adjust the regulator to get the flow rate that I want. We're setting, I usually hang around 15 CFH for feed for just about everything. That's usually enough. If you're really humming and you've got it cranked up on some thick stuff, I'll bump it up to as much as 20, but usually 15 handles most of the welding that at least I do. Now, because we are going with flux core welding, I actually do need to change, and I'm going to shut it down just to be safe, but I need to go and reverse the polarity of our equipment here. So that's just as simple as flip-flopping these guys. So my ground clamp is now in the positive lead, right? Yep. And my negative is now being fed, it loops through right back to the gun. So let's give that a shot. Plenty of power. Jeez. Yeah, that welds nice. Let's see what we got for. Oh, great penetration right on through. So I just hit that. Now this is just some super strut, so it's relatively thick stuff. Only reading 95 amps as far as the setting goes, and based on what I'm seeing there, you're getting all your 95 amps. It's much more accurate than any of short of my Lincoln. Lincoln's pretty right on, but that's about as accurate as I've seen a setting get. So let me just hit this with the wheel so you can take a look at it. Oh, keep in mind this is flux core, so it's not going to be a pretty weld, but focus. There you go. Nice smooth puddle, and you can even see in the center there, you see that little distortion in the metal, just showing that you got full heat, full penetration right through both sides of the steel. And again, that's on 95, and it'll let you go to 165 on 120 volts, which is all this is on right now. So yeah, actually let's bump that up and see what that looks like since we're here. 166. Let's see what that does to the metal. That's what I'm talking about. Hell yeah, brother. Blew right through that, no problem at all. So I've swapped the machine out back to regular wire now. We are back on gas. It's a mixture that I'm feeding it. Really impressed with its gasless welding ability, just using Flux core welding wire. It really did a nice job. But now we'll see how she does with a more typical and probably more commonly used setup here back on gas. Just got this same old demo piece here. I'm just going to try to dial in the amperage setting, and then we'll go on to a butt joint here. So let's start with this. There we go. I can get good gas coverage on that first hit, but second one, she's looking good. All right, so we've got some 1/8 inch plate here, actually 2 of them. They're already welded together on the back side, actually from another YesWelder machine that I was doing a demo on. So let's try the front side of the weld now. Almost looks like I know what I'm doing. Nice good weld. Probably could use a hair bit more gas flow. And actually, we'll take a look at the nozzle on this. All right, so it just escapes around the side. Actually, I like that a lot better. A lot of these nozzles use plastic guides. This one looks like, no, it's not plastic. No, it's got some sort of, maybe even brass. Because the plastic guides, or the plastic gas kind of channels tend to break off in these things. They get so super hot. But this one is all metal of some type. Again, I think it's brass, but that's very nice. So, I mean, it does a nice job. Very clean weld, nice and tight, minimal splatter. And the splatter that you do see there is probably more a result of me not prepping my metal right and not the welder itself, but definitely does a nice job. Probably a tad high on the feed speed, and that's on, all of this is on default settings. So, you know, I could either bump the heat up a little bit more or bring down that feed speed and we get it to lay a little bit flatter than it did. But, you know, from a demonstration standpoint, that definitely Bob's your auntie. A pretty common size steel, roll cage type work, chassis work, that type of thing. And I'm gonna do this on regular 120 volts. Not even gonna push it up to the 220. We'll just see how it does. I am gonna dial back that feed speed just a tiny bit because I know it's a little hot and heavy for what we're doing. Oh, actually, you know what? I still have more. I wasn't even maxed out on amperage. All right, well, that should help. So in that case, I'm gonna leave the feed speed at its default setting, and we'll see how it does on 060. Just tack it in a couple spots. Pro tip, welding goes way better when you put your ground strap on. That's ground strap on, not ground strap on. That laid in beautiful on a regular household current, but look how nice that weld just laid right in. I mean, that's a beautifully joined piece of metal right there. Again, forgiving the holes and the tack and everything else. I will say it likes a little bit on the higher side of the gas output, just because of that nozzle design, but not bad. I mean, we're still well within range. Like, what am I at right now? I can check because we have a handy dandy gas button. Oh Jesus, I'm down low. That's not even asking for a lot. I just have it turned down too much. So I was only at about 4. So again, I'm a victim of my own cheapness here, where I'll turn down the gas so far that I don't care if I've got a little bit of haze here and some coloring, as long as the weld itself doesn't have pinholes and, you know, showing it's bubbling up and not a well-protected weld, just to save a little bit of gas. So that's exactly what it is. I had this down at 4. This is probably going to be happier in the 5 to 6 range. It doesn't take much, but that's pretty common actually for just about any MIG welder. I just like to cheat it down a little bit and make my gas tanks last longer than they would otherwise. Probably 040 plate against some 1/4 inch plate. So we're going to do a mixture of two. I'm going to direct most of the heat into the 1/4 inch plate and kind of drag it up to catch the thinner plate, which is how you'd want to weld 2 different size metals. So a little bit trickier weld, but I'm going to try to get a nice clean weld out of this thing. Yeah, that's beautiful. Nice MIG. Great heat penetration all the way through. Backside, you can see that pattern there. And again, 1/4 inch plate, this stuff's no joke. And a little warm too. But yeah, no joke to go through 1/4 inch for anything. And we're doing this on 120 volts. Nice even puddle though, very controllable, very steady. Yeah, very nice. So if you held a gun to my head and told me I had to tell you something bad about it, probably the only thing I would like to see done better would be the interface. I like one button or one dial and make an adjustment rather than scrolling through menus. That is a real nitpicky thing. And if you use the machine every day, I'm sure you just get used to it. I'm just not used to that yet, so I found it a little cumbersome, but it's not complicated, it's just cumbersome, which I'll take any day over being complicated. As far as what those menus control and the preset settings between voltage, amperage, and feed speed, I really didn't have much to pick apart on that at all. It laid a beautiful weld using those factory curves basically that are set into the machine, so that's really nice for a beginner, takes all the thought out of it. Yeah, I mean, no complaints there. Build quality, just like the rest of YesWelder stuff. I have not found anything on the inside of these guys to disappoint me yet. That wire feed mechanism that's a Miller if it's anything in terms of quality, all steel. Love the gun, like the nozzle setup being all metal, not easy to find anymore. Good gun setup, nice overmolding on that. And obviously the weld quality it's perfect. I mean, there's nothing, I don't long for anything on that end of it. Yeah, I mean, that's it, that thing rocks. So as always, any questions, comments, concerns, and or criticisms, throw them down in the comment section below me. Thank you guys very much for watching. Feel free to subscribe or don't subscribe. I'm not gonna tell you what to do. You're full grown adults. But yeah, thanks for watching. Have a great day. We'll catch you on the next one.